Good morning, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Plunge and Coffee. Ben, come on in. Ben is a young PhD graduate. He's 24. He's a research scientist in Microsoft, and he has also ran a marathon. So we're going to talk about how he balanced PhD and working out and running a marathon. We're going to hop in the plunge, 2 minutes or so. I got a few questions for him. Let's see how he holds up. You ready?
This will be pretty tough.
3, 2, 1, plunge.
You can't see, but I'm sitting on that big block of ice. It's like a toilet seat.
You ready for the questions?
Yeah.
What's a fond memory that you have during your PhD and during the marathon?
I'd say for the marathon, there's this really funny moment where I was like, I don't know, I was some miles in where I was getting really tired, and we were at a point where the paths cross with the people that are before you in the marathon, and I saw this guy running crossways to me who was just running in the heat, like his feet were slapping the pavement barefoot.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking like, man, I'm glad I'm not that guy. And that was just so funny to me that, like, I don't know, the people watching the marathon are probably thinking they're glad they're not me.
There's always someone running barefoot, and I love it.
Yeah, from the PhD, I'd say like it's this funny picture that my wife showed me from when I started. I was like kind of smiling and like ready to go and ambitious, and then like partway through the PhD, she took a picture of me late night working, like shirtless, like hunched over my desk in the dark. And I think the contrast is just pretty funny, like to see how much I've evolved.
Progression of a PhD student.
I guess so.
What was more harder at the moment? Was it defending your thesis, or was it the last 6 miles of the marathon?
I have to say, at the time, the last 6 miles of the marathon had to be harder. I mean, when I was defending my thesis, it was kind of like just the downward slope is pretty easy. I'd say the last year of the PhD was just kind of a blur, and that was pretty difficult. Lots of things to do, but honestly, it's like it's not like I could quit at that point.
Right.
Whereas with the marathon, I could always hop over the fence and kind of be done.
That's 4 minutes.
All right.
You want to call it?
Let's get out of here, man.
We are back with the coffee. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ben, what is a PhD, and what was your research on?
Yeah, so a PhD is a terminal degree. It's in the sciences. Learn how to do independent research. So my dissertation, the topic is on detecting vulnerabilities in source code using deep learning.
What made you decide that you wanted to pursue the research route?
The initial reason I wanted to get a PhD is because I wanted to become a professor. In my undergrad, there were some professors that were pretty influential and kind of inspiring to me. So I wanted to be in that position to help some other people that are kind of in that point in their life. So that's why I started the PhD. I started doing research and actually learned that being a professor is pretty difficult, like just from like a lifestyle standpoint. I mean, to get tenure takes many years of hard work. And a lot of a professor's job is doing a lot of administration tasks and trying to apply for some grants and stuff. And you actually end up a little bit farther away from the research than I'd like to be. So how I ended up is I kind of started doing this industry research so that I can stay closer to the work. But yeah, the initial motivation was to teach others.
Nice. What would you say is the hardest part about research and PhD in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably the hardest part about research is just not knowing what you should do. So there's a lot of people out there doing research in computer science, my topic. But oftentimes when you try to tackle a hard problem that's like open-ended, there's a lot of things you could try, and only a few of them will usually be helpful. So I think takes a lot of like creativity to try to come up with ideas that haven't been tried before, that might be helpful, and then also like a lot of technical skill to actually make those things come to light.
So you have to do novel research. It's not like you're taking work online and giving it your own touch, right? It's got to be something that's not done before, and that's what makes it hard.
Yeah, I guess so. I'd say just like the unknown. I mean, we do research because we're trying to like push forward the boundary of human knowledge. And I think like a necessary pain to that is just that no one will really be able to help you out. or no one really knows the answer to some of the questions that you're asking. And that can be quite a departure from the work that you've done, like maybe in undergrad or in school before.
Yeah, I agree. PhD or research or to do something novel is pretty daunting, right? To think about, is it really that hard to develop something new, to find that new idea?
I mean, when you're going through a research project, there are always some processes that can help you along your way, such as like, I mean, having a clear study design can help you know what you're measuring and then know whether you're able to answer a certain question or whether the answer is inconclusive. And then being kind of embedded in the research can help just kind of broaden your mind and make you aware of what other people are doing. But I'd say like good research after the fact. So after you've kind of made some finding and then you're writing it up or showing it to someone else. A lot of times, good research ideas are pretty simple. So like afterwards, it sort of seems obvious, and it's like, why didn't someone do this before? So that I'd say like it's kind of a weird thing. Like before you get into it, no one really knows what you should do, but then afterwards, it sort of seems like the answer is pretty obvious.
It's almost like you're creating something new based on the learnings you did in the past, right? To put things together and then you kind of come up with something new and try it out, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right?
Yeah, I mean it's always like standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So whenever we're doing some scientific work, there's even in our field of computer science that has a relatively short history, there's many people before us that have found, I guess, done a lot of great research to lead to the next step that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So it is always building off someone else.
What's an advice you will give a student who's maybe in the early days of PhD or somebody who wants to pursue a PhD?
Yeah, I'd say it's really important to know why you're doing this. So, I mean, before you enter into grad school, you kind of have this choice of whether to keep going into school or to start working. And even like if you're already working a job and you're thinking about going back for a PhD, it's kind of the same choice. There's this opportunity cost where you're losing maybe 5 years that you could be increasing your career. I'd say like kind of in the middle of the PhD is like the hard part where you're like on the verge of quitting. There's like usually you've been hitting your head against the wall for a while on some hard problem, and you don't know whether you'll make any headway, and you're just about to quit. So I think in that moment, it's very important to like have a strong reason why you want to do a PhD, so that you can carry through and have the endurance to finish it.
Many of the scientists who are renowned for their great work, they have gone to the point where they're just about to quit. It's not working out, and then there's a revelation of some sort, or like the next day they get this huge idea and it just works out. And I think it's not just luck, right? It's you've put in so much time and effort that it's you get to that point of failure, and that's when something works out. And then it's not luck. It's just that you were so close, and now you just when you're about to quit, you didn't quit, and then it worked out. And I think just sometimes the universe works in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think even after the PhD, it, this kind of feeling of uncertainty carries on if you're in any kind of research for your career. So it's important to kind of keep that motivation that you started with, and then carry it with you.
So you also enjoyed running. You've also ran a marathon, which is a huge achievement. How did you balance working on your PhD with research, with extensive research, long hours, and still training or keeping up with the runs, able to do a marathon?
Yeah, thanks. You make it sound like I'm so active. In the beginning, I wasn't working out at all. I mean, I used to work out when I was in college a lot, like lifting. And I just sort of dropped it when I started grad school, thinking I'd be too busy. I think I always thought that I just didn't have time to work out. But when my wife said that she wanted to work out with me, I looked at how my days were going, and I realized that there was a lot of time I was spending on things that weren't working out, and then weren't very useful, like maybe browsing Reddit or YouTube, or just spending time on things around the house that didn't need to be done. So I just kind of made the commitment to start working out just a little bit in a way that's manageable. And it turned out that it was very doable. I mean, it would work out in the morning before work, um, and then I would find that I have fresh energy for the rest of the day. So it actually helped me get things done faster. So I guess in a way, like balancing it was just kind of committing to start working out because I knew that I wanted to have some exercise in my life, and then making it work by taking out unneeded things, or realizing the benefits of the exercise on the rest of my kind of work life.
Yeah. Would you say it's equally important to indulge in doing things other than research and work, training for a marathon, going to the gym, just being healthy? How impactful is that in your research?
Yeah, it is super important to have something besides your work. It's like The Shining: all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's like, if you're just single-mindedly focused on one thing, I think it's easy to get into a rut and quickly become frustrated with the thing that you're doing, or just kind of suffer from a lack of creativity and energy. So I find that personally, for me, exercising helps me to improve my mood for like my personal life, and then also for my work, it helps me kind of stay calm and get less frustrated. So yeah, I think it is important. I mean, I think that it can be a little bit tough to imagine when you're in the middle and swamped with work. But even exploring things like hobbies and music can bring fresh inspiration into your work and kind of make your work day easier in a way.
100%. I think Darwin, when he was working on the theory of evolution, he got a lot of inspiration from other areas that he also worked on. He worked on many projects at the same time, and there's a good TED talk about this multitasking. It's something about multitasking. It talks about how all these people in the past, successful people, have indulged themselves in different arts and projects and kind of have balanced it and taken inspiration from one work and translated to another.
I mean, I think in a way, like, because your mind is kind of really good at working on something if it wants to. If you sort of immerse yourself in this project that you're working on, such as your research, then whenever you're doing something else, you're focusing on that thing, like biking. But in the back of your mind, you're kind of replaying over what you've done and what you would like to try, and you can sometimes come up with some fresh ideas.
I agree. Whenever I go on my long runs, it's anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, and I don't typically listen to music. So it's a time where I connect to my own thoughts, connect to my inner self, and just have a conversation with myself, have that dialogue where I'm thinking about the problems and issues at research, life.
I mean, to add to your example, I think famously Einstein came up with the idea for special relativity when he was on the train ride home. So it just kind of gives you a fresh perspective on things.
Yeah. Doing your PhD and running a marathon, was it an act of grit that you wanted to kind of prove yourself maybe that you can also do this and not just, focus on research? What was your thought process on wanting to do a marathon?
Yeah, I think a lot of people asked me that why I was doing the marathon. And honestly, I feel like my answer is a little bit silly because there's this saying that a PhD is a marathon, not a sprint. And it means that you have to have a lot of endurance for doing a PhD, really, in doing research in general. You cannot just like grind all night and work late nights and all the time to get it done. I think it's pretty easy to suffer burnout that way. So I kind of got it in my head that it would be a good idea to actually do a marathon during that time. And I guess my reason is just that, like, having that kind of physical endurance is something that's sort of the same but different than having the spiritual endurance for doing hard research. So that's kind of the reason I started to do the
That's
marathon.
beautiful, man. You put that perfectly into words.
When I was kind of on the fence about doing the PhD, that was kind of when I met you and started working with you in the lab. And I think previously I had it in my head that if you do a marathon, then you have to be one of those guys that like shows up in spandex to the office and like is always talking about running and eats like salads every day. But you lead a pretty normal life, So I realized, okay, if this guy did a marathon and can be a normal guy, then I think I can too.
I take a huge inspiration from you, how you've pushed yourself to pursue research, how you've excelled in research, and also you've pushed yourself to run a marathon because this is not easy to do either of these things. Like finishing a PhD is such a big achievement at such a young age, being 24, and running a marathon takes a lot of grit, takes a lot of hard work, takes a lot of mental strength. It's not just physical to get through it, and you're getting through both of them at very close proximity because you defended your thesis 2 weeks or a week after the marathon, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
that's a great achievement. Are you just an exception to the stereotype that computer scientists have no life outside of studying, or is it not true?
I'd say this. Well, stereotypes are. If it was true for everyone, it'd be called a rule, right? I think I had a certain perception about people who get a PhD before I entered into it. But when I entered into grad school, what I realized is that it's just a bunch of normal people who thought it would be a good idea to go get a PhD. So I mean, probably being in academia for a while selects for like people who enjoy being in a school environment and maybe have some resources to continue their schooling. But I'd say, yeah, I do meet a lot of people, and I'm continually surprised by the crazy and weird things that people do outside of their work. For example, like I work with this guy that is kind of in the researchy side, and he just took off like some months to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So it's like
Wow.
people can do anything, right? And I'm finding more and more that yeah, the stereotype that computer science people are like single focused nerds kind of is lifting a little bit.
A final note to the audience, Ben. What's one of your favorite quote or a mantra that plays in your head?
Hey, well, I got it tattooed on me. It's called "Know Thyself." So Socrates said this long ago, and
Know thyself.
yeah, I think it's it's just important to know to kind of dig into your own mind, learn about your emotions and motivations, to know what your limitations are, and then also know what you're capable of, like overcoming those limitations, and then also knowing your place in life. So yeah, I think it's good thing to follow. I tried to follow it.
That's beautiful. And on that note, thank you so much, Ben, for coming to my Coke Lunch and Coffee.